Hello and welcome to my Philadelphia Flyers podcast. My name is Ian Smith and today is December 9th, 2014. Um it is currently in the middle of the third period for the Flyers right now. The Flyers are losing 2-1 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Um Currently I just wanted to talk about the Flyers' woes lately, and we've in the beginning of the season, it was the Flyers' weakness was their injured defensemen and their shaky defense, even when they were healthy. But lately, it is honestly their forwards, and we did not think that this was going to be an issue this season. Uh, the Flyers do have a really good group of forwards, but they are not seen. They do not seem to show it right now. Um, uh, the Flyers average only 1.2 goals per game over their 2-8-2 streak, dating back. I kind of like to split this season up so far before and after the 5-day break in November, near the beginning of November, um, where they had, I think, 5 or 6 days in between games, and then the Flyers had a home game against the Blue Jackets actually that Friday, and the Flyers have not played the same ever since. The Flyers got all their defensemen back: um, Luke Shen, Braden Coburn. They're all back except Shane Gostisbehere. But he was in the minors, so he was kind of a backup defenseman, and he was a rookie too. So Michael Raffl is back from injury. But the Flyers don't seem to create opportunities anymore, and they have not. At the beginning of the season, they had a, a difficult schedule, to say the least, for the Flyers. Um, they had a really, they started out the season strong, gaining a winning record, climbing up the standings, and then all they had to do was continue their success. They just had to keep playing the way they were, and they should have been good because this was supposed to be their easy stretch. Where I don't know if this is considered. It's an okay. It's an all right stretch. Uh, After the Flyers, the Flyers had to play the Blue Jackets. Then the Canadiens. The Canadiens are tough. The Rangers. The Rangers shouldn't have been tough if Flyers would have been playing the way they should have, but lost 2-0 because they couldn't score goals. They lost at home to Minnesota 3-2. They beat the Blue Jackets after playing them for the second time of the season, 4-2 at home. Then they lost 1-0 in a shootout. That's another problem. If they grind it out and get to a shootout, which is really good, even if they don't score any goals, you have an opportunity to score goals in the shootout. So they should try to fix that issue. Then they lost at Detroit 5-2 after beating Detroit at home 4-2 earlier in the season. And Steve Mason was actually the goaltender for that game when Ray Emery was the goaltender for the game that was earlier in the season. Then they lost again to the Rangers 3-0 at home. And then the very next day, 5-2 in New York. That was the Black Friday. And then the day after. Then they lost. Then there was a West Coast road trip, which is it's difficult because the West Coast, obviously does have above average hockey teams. They lost 2-1 in San Jose. Then the next night they lost in a shootout, another shootout loss. They have not had a shootout win this season. They lost 5-4 in a shootout to the Ducks, and then they beat the LA Kings 2-1, and they beat the LA Kings, the Stanley Cup champions. Even though people say, obviously they're not as good as they were like last year. they did barely sneak into the playoffs as an 8th seed. Came back from 3 games down to win the series against the Sharks. But you cannot deny that the Kings had a tiny bit of luck. Even though these players worked so hard to do it, it's really unfortunate for the Sharks and extremely lucky for the Kings to do that sort of accomplishment. Even though they did work very hard to achieve it. Because they obviously didn't do as well in the regular season, coming in as an 8th seed. But then again, Flyers right now are playing the Blue Jackets for the 3rd time of the season, hoping to gain the advantage. The Flyers, obviously, they've struggled against the Rangers this season. They play the Rangers, I think, one more time. I don't think they play them more than once. They play them one more time. The Flyers need to create opportunities. They're not the fastest team in the NHL, and they're even though they have a good group of forwards, it's not a speed. It's not like except for Claude Giroux and Vincent Cavalier in his prime, but Cavalier is obviously not in his prime anymore. He's 40 years old. The Flyers aren't built around speed. They're around gritty, grinders for the forwards. So, you're not going to beat people across the ice, But, this could still... Coach Craig Berube, I'm sure he's doing, trying as hard as he can. But, the Flyers have to, create opportunities somehow. They're not the fastest team, but they can create plays, passing around the net. They and the one thing I'm a little frustrated about is their defensemen. They aren't really chipping in all that much. With defensemen, they usually don't score a lot, but they contribute. They can contribute a little bit. A good offensive defenseman would score about 10 goals a season, but we're only asking for 5. If you're a defenseman, all 6 start for the. If they can at least score 6 goals, that would be wonderful. 36 extra goals. But I feel like the Flyers defensemen aren't contributing anything. Like, it's ridiculous. They have this amazing group of forwards that are only averaging 1.9 goals per game over the last 12 games. If one person doesn't, play his full potential that night, then another group on the team has to step up. And even if it is the 4th line or the defenseman, somebody has to step up on the team. And they aren't doing it. Craig Berube, he's doing, but and it's what's his name? The Flyers need to start making trades. Ron Hextall, obviously he's in his first season as the Flyers general manager, but Paul Holmgren, he left Ron Hextall in kind of not the best of states that he could have left. Paul Holmgren did make some really bad trades when he was the Flyers general manager, so it was they should have fired him, or obviously he retired. So maybe Ron Hextall can fix it. It's good. Or the Flyers don't have an enforcer, but they have grinders. So it's not like they're a weak team. They have grinders. They can, hit pretty much the entire game. But Ron Ron Hextall decided not to put an enforcer on the team because he wanted to move in a different direction. But I don't see this team moving in a different direction. I see it as the same team without an enforcer. You gotta moving in a different direction is changing your entire game plan. Whether it is you're from going from a grinding out team that grinds out 3-2 win, 2-1 wins. You go into a team that's going to win 5-1 or 6-2, and not just by. It's not going to be that one game where they win 6-2. It's multiple games where they're going to get lots of goals, and that's because you're fast. You can create separation, and you can get scoring chances, and that's not the Flyers. I see the same team without an enforcer. I want to see, and it's a grinding out team is good. They did it earlier in the season. They beat good teams. They beat the Penguins, the Red Wings, the Kings. They beat good teams earlier in the season. But if they're not continuing their ways, so you got to change it up. So the Flyers are going to play the Devils on Thursday night, and right now the Flyers getting some shorthanded opportunities on the Blue Jackets. And we'll see. We'll see what they do. If they can pull out this victory, it will be huge. It will be their first win streak in a while. They have not had a win streak since that 6-day break in between the Colorado Avalanche game and the Columbus Blue Jackets game. So we'll see. And I will probably update this podcast tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you for listening.